Yes Guy, Mail It In Friday. Jim Tatti Dave Feschuk with you, which sort of redefines Mail It In Friday, does it not?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're trying, but not that hard, as is the tradition of Mail It In Friday.
Yeah, I just don't have the feet up, but everything else is up. Bob Weeks will be by at 4:30 talking about the Open. It was an up and down day, unless your last name is Harmon, and he had a pretty good day.
Oh, yeah, he just keeps going down and down and down in terms of lower and lower on the leaderboard. Man, this guy...
5-shot lead.
Yeah, playing some golf. The little lefty has got a nice game plan out there at Royal Liverpool.
Had the round of the day, no question about that. So Weeks will clue us in on all of that at the bottom of the hour. Top of the next hour, Keegan Matheson is the Jays split for Seattle. Yes Guy, no Guy at 5:30, and everything signed off on that. Dave Sims, who works for the Mariners, voice of the Mariners, TV voice, will be by at 6:25. Rod Smith from the play-by-play booth at Tim Hortons Field, where the Argos and the Cats will square off. The Cats with their rookie quarterback at 2-3, and the Argonauts at a lofty 4-0 and getting all kinds of respect.
They're rolling.
Yeah,
Great
they are.
to see.
They look
Great
good.
to
I mean,
see.
I almost want to cross my fingers for them because it's so early in the season. They've had 2 bye weeks, 4-0. Quarterback looks good. Offensive line looks good. Running backs look good. Defense looks good. I mean, everything's firing. But as you know, the Grey Cup is awarded in late November.
Yeah, a long way to go. Is it still early for Edmonton? Because
No, it's not. It's too late for Edmonton.
I noticed they lost again.
Yeah, yes.
Last night.
Yeah, that's the ultimate sorry guy.
0-7 now.
Yeah, and
My gosh.
Winnipeg and Saskatchewan the next 2 games. And
At least they didn't lose at home again. They lost in Winnipeg.
Yeah, one streak. Yes. Yeah, you can separate the streaks.
Right.
The morbid streaks that they're on. We spent a lot of time, pre-show. We were both sitting here for about an hour, and we did I thought it was a nice discussion. Unfortunately, it wasn't recorded on the Samsonov arbitration, because if you're looking for the result, it's not in, and I don't know exactly when it will be in, because things are presented to the arbitrator, and then the arbitrator has to look through all this stuff. But we were speculating, and you have some inside information in terms of not the specific case, but how this has handled it. And I immediately went to the offer. And so the offer from the Leafs is 2.4, as we're well aware, and 4.9 is the response from the Samsonov camp. And I immediately circled the 2.4.
Right.
And I don't know how relevant or what the arbitrator goes through, but if you're going to go through a bunch of numbers that come up with comparable playing numbers, you should do a forensics on how we get to 2.4, or how, in fact, he got to 1.8 a year ago. And so Washington walked away,
Yes.
assuming that the arbitration a year ago was going to be somewhere in the 3s, as you detailed. And it wound up, the Leafs got him for a bargain at 1.8. So that's where I have trouble with the 2.4, because it's predicated on the 1.8, which
Yeah.
is kind of a soft figure, because he was denied process.
Well, he was denied process, but he was also a free agent, and anybody in the league could have signed him last year, right? And the Maple Leafs chose to do it, and they got him at what they felt was a, prove it to me $1.8 million contract, and yeah, he proved it to him to a certain degree, you could say. At $1.8 million, he was by far their most reliable goaltender. They made the bet on Matt Murray, which did not turn out, and still is a bit of an albatross that they're going to have to figure out before next season. But look, I mean, you can see both sides of this. You can
Yes, you can.
You can certainly see why Ilya Samsonov would, and his agency Newport Sports would put out $4.9 million. There's plenty of goaltenders who get overpaid to the tune of $4.9 million that probably have similar stats to Ilya Samsonov, and I'm sure you can make that case. If I'm the Maple Leafs, I'm like, wait a second, $2.4 million is, a nice, healthy raise on 1.8. Considering you played 40 games for us last year, and considering you stunk in the playoffs, or you weren't particularly good in the playoffs, we're being very generous to you here. And you did prove something to us in the regular season last year, but you didn't prove much to us in the playoffs. And the bottom line was, nobody believed in you as a playoff goaltender last year. You came into the situation in Toronto with 1 career playoff win, and you got 4 wins as a member of the Maple Leafs, but you also had 4 losses and a lot of low moments. And so I think, you can make the case for both. I think the arbitrator, who has to come up with a decision within 48 hours after the meeting adjourns, or the hearing adjourns, is going to find something in the middle, right? They usually find something in the middle here. So I'm betting on 3 points.
And there's enough leeway in there. I don't know that it's exactly right in the middle. But I'm just fascinated as to what is sort of relevant in terms of, because both sides will have volumes to present.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering what sort of sticks to the wall, because I can go through the forensics on his contract and say that, it was light last year, and then there's always, no matter what you say, there's a counter, and somebody would say, well, what were his other offers? And they're probably, I don't know if there were any others, but that's the one he decided. So the 1.8 can be twisted in a couple of directions.
Yeah, for sure it can. And look, I mean, when you look at the history of arbitration and you talk to people who've been involved in it over the years, a lot of times it comes down to comparables, right? Like the most compelling arguments to arbitrators are the comparable contracts around the league, right? So, you can find a million of them. And so I think you can find comparables on both sides of the argument.
And I think there's certainly an emotional fan base would have cap concerns, but the arbitrator doesn't care. And you could say that the sample size for the Leafs to deal with is small, and I would agree with that. But either way, I mean, we're talking about a 1-year deal here, so that either forces a decision to be made if it's not favorable for the hockey team, or it puts it in a 12-month limbo program that both sides have to find out a way how to make that work.
Yeah, like you're right. I think ultimately that's good for the club. This is a system that is pretty club friendly, right? Like the idea that at worst you're attached to a guy for one more year at a number that may be to your a little higher than you'd like. You can live with that. And to your point, if it was worst case scenario and the arbitrator came back and said, you know what, we bought every argument that Ilya Samsonov brought to us, we're going to give him 4.9 because it has breached that 4.538 walk away number, the Leafs would have the option to say, no, thank you. We'll walk away from that. We'll figure something else out, and he can become an unrestricted free agent tomorrow.
Yeah, it's a great conversation. It'll be, I guess, outdated as soon as the arbitrator rules and we know what we're dealing with. But for now, there's all kinds of stuff there. I just want to get into Marty Baron was on First Up, and he's been in arbitration in his time, and he actually liked it. Here's what he offered up.
But the second time I went, and I loved it. Now, I know I'm probably in the exception, but I loved it. It was so. Imagine you're in this like TV show that has police drama and courtroom drama, and you're like in it. You're actually seeing the arguments going from one side to the other. Some heated moments, some moments where you say, "Okay, we need a timeout here," and you go and talk amongst yourselves. I loved it. I thought it was fun. I thought it was interesting. Look, I can take criticism, right? So if you tell me I was terrible, in this aspect of the game or this aspect of the game, I know if I really was or not, or if you're just trying to prove a point. So, but some guys hated it. Some guys absolutely can't stand it, but I loved it.
Well, and then the obvious point is, do you really want to sit there and listen to somebody else's opinion of yourself when your own opinion is kind of the most important one?
Yeah, I've heard players go on both sides of this. Like, I think Marty is on the exception of loving arbitration. I don't. He may be the only person I've ever heard say they love the arbitration process. Because certainly you hear the opposite, which is the arbitration process is such a cantankerous, contentious process because you are essentially making an argument as the team for why this player isn't worth the money he's asking for. It gets very personal, and you definitely hear players that. And Jeff O'Neill, who usually sits at this table at this hour, is one of those guys who's been on record as saying that when he came out of arbitration the first time, his first reaction was, "I never want to play for that team again." And certainly, you hear that story quite a bit. You also hear guys who say to their agents, "I'm not going anywhere near that room. I don't want to hear what they say. Just tell me what the number is."
It makes sense to me.
Yeah. Because why would you what's the productive part of hearing how your team doesn't believe in you, essentially, unless you're trying to rev yourself up to say, okay, you don't believe in me. Now I'm going to stick it to you. I'm going to take your crappy arbitration number. I'm going to play my butt off. I'm going to play better than I ever have. And I'm going to leave you in the lurch next year when I'm an unrestricted free agent. I'm going to double, triple my salary, and I won't be anywhere near you when I'm excelling.
And that's a common thought, really, with the whole arbitration process is once you get in there, I think most, 99% of anybody listening to this would be of the opinion it's 1 year and he's out. Do we know
Well,
that?
we don't know that.
No,
we don't know that because, look, if it became very, contentious, personal, if it wasn't a good negotiation that led to this, because let's face it, it's surprising that it's led to this, that it's come to this. Usually these things get worked out long before an arbitrator gets brought into the room, right?
Yeah.
And usually, like the vast majority of these cases, the team and the player can come to a number they both agree on, and everything's fine. They shake hands and they move on. I think it says something here. It says a lot about, the fact that Samsonov, to my mind, has proven very little. I don't believe in Samsonov. I'm not sure how you can. He's been fine, but he hasn't blown you away, and he certainly was disappointing in the playoffs to my eyes. So set that aside. The other thing is the Leafs are in a very strange situation right here. You got a new GM that's come in with a, absolute laundry list of things to do on a daily basis. You can't even imagine the length of Brad Treliving's things to do today list, right? It's a ridiculously long list. And he's also capped out. He's got cap problems coming out the wazoo. And maybe he's trying to say, after consulting with Brendan Shanahan, what went wrong? Why didn't it work with Kyle Dubas? Where has this franchise missed the point? Where do we need to improve? Well, we've all been sitting around going, they treat their players, beyond respectfully. They pay them beyond reasonably. Maybe that's part of the problem. Not that you shouldn't treat your players respectfully, not that you shouldn't pay them reasonably, but I think they've gone above and beyond on all those things. And maybe a little bit of hardball from management for the first time since Lou Lamoriello left the building, maybe a little hardball from management is not a bad thing.
As you were saying that, I started to think, if you're the new guy, meaning the new general manager, and you want to sort of change things, what's the best way to do it? And for me, it would be have a bunch of people on contracts that don't have any term.
Prove it to me.
Just because that certainly that. And the other one is you've got flexibility next year. I don't know how much you could do to this roster when you've just taken over that job without making a misstep. I mean, you have to tread carefully here. But if you know that next summer you've got leeway and options, that's a plus because they really haven't had that before.
That's a great point, Jim. I think that you're right. If you're Brad Treliving, you can't be expected to turn it around overnight here, right? You can't be expected to remake it overnight. But what he could do is remake it by next summer, because by next summer you've got a situation. Now you assume they're going to re-sign Matthews, who would be a free agent next year, but you may have, if you're going to, we had Mike Johnson on yesterday, and he was bringing up the possibility. Again, it's just a possibility, but the idea that maybe William Nylander plays as an own rental this year.
Sure.
If they can't come to an agreement and they can't find a really good trade option, is it the worst thing in the world to walk him to free agency? Well, it's not the best thing in the world.
Always got the trade deadline.
But yeah, you got the trade deadline. But you're not going to give this guy away. You don't trade from a position of weakness and just give him away. So, and if he wants to play hardball in negotiations, maybe he could be a free agent next year. Bertuzzi, 1-year deal. Domi, 1-year deal. Sam Lafferty, UFA next year. TJ Brody, UFA after this season. John Klingberg, 1-year deal, UFA. So you got some leeway there, to your point, where you could make a serious bid at remodeling a roster if it continues to prove a flawed roster in the playoffs.
I hope they wouldn't be put in a position of trading Nylander at the deadline, but if they were, I mean, who would be a better acquisition? He might be the top of the list. I mean, you might be surprised at what the offer would be. Yeah. It would be tough on the existing roster because you're probably getting futures back. But
they've lost with him. They could lose without him.
that is the bottom line in all of it. You've got won playoff round in the time that Vegas has been born.
I mean,
and been in 2 Stanley Cup Finals and won one. So
that's my thing. He's a good player. He's put up numbers, but they've still not reached anywhere near their potential or what people have believed their potential to be. So nobody's indispensable. Nobody's untradeable. And that certainly applies to William Nylander.
But I mean, the arbitration whole thing, though, it's a great discussion, and again, will be made totally irrelevant once the ruling is made. But
if the arbitrator's got a big weekend plan, maybe we'll hear about it during the show.
That's right. Yeah, this was a slam dunk.
That's right. Got to go.
I mean,
you guys.
And I don't know where you are in the dollar figure, but it's not 2.4. I had it. Originally, I thought the answer to all this would be, and I really hesitated on 3 years.
Okay.
But I had it just slightly over 4.
Or 3.
Just understanding that the player's coughing up 2 UFA years.
Yeah.
But even that, I mean, the 1 year kind of works for me.
Yeah, I don't like, you saw, we talked about this the other day when we were on the show about Ottawa giving Korpisalo a 5-year deal. Like, I don't love 5-year deals for goaltenders. I really don't, because, I mean, who's really confident in their projections on goaltenders year to year? Nobody is.
It's something you don't want to lock into.
No.
Unless you've got the Hall of Famer.
Right.
But, it seems to me that we're in a period of time now where, people just have good years and then they don't.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think look, I understand that sometimes you got to pay if you want the player, but, to me, that might be the inherent problem with what the Maple Leafs have done in net, is that they just haven't had enough options, right? They've always been locked into.
Well, they're looking for the answer, and they've anointed and gone the distance with 2 or 3, and it's just blown up on them.
And they've always just been, a lot of times it's just blind bets, right? Like Matt Murray, nobody was second guessing the Matt Murray contract. We were first guessing it.
Well, yeah.
This whole town was like, wait, who? Matt Murray?
Well, let's be honest. A year ago, when both those guys were signed, it was like, okay.
Is that really what you want?
I think it could work out, but I don't,
well,
we were skeptical.
Right, and it was kind of like this idea, a bet on regaining the old glory of 2016, 2017. Well, guess what? 2016, 2017 was a long time ago for Matt Murray especially.
Yeah.
And he didn't come close to regaining the glory that he had in those days. And
so we've talked about for about 15 minutes, and I think that maybe we've agreed with the fact that it should have gone to arbitration, and it did, because I don't know what the answer is, and probably sometimes it's better just to live with the decision.
And I think ultimately, when you think about it, I think it's good for the Leafs. Like, they're not like the idea that it's a 1-year thing. To your point, they got a lot of 1-year deals this year, and I think that's by design, because
including the coach. Let's not forget about that.
Well, yeah, and they just brought in a guy named Guy Boucher who has NHL head coaching experience and was a favored candidate to coach this team when Brendan Shanahan was running it before they stumbled on Mike Babcock.
Yeah. So and that's the automatic assumption with this. I kind of look at it this way: is I think when you're assessing a head coach, which they are, because it's a new general manager, you have to do everything possible to have that work out, and that's what I would look at those 2 hirings as doing. They bolstered the support staff, and they've got a guy who's been a head coach before, and I mean all bets are hedged.
Well, and they've got a guy that you can throw that can stand on the bench if you happen to throw Sheldon Keefe off of it, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's be honest. The last couple of starts.
Yeah, the last 2 October Novembers, Sheldon Keefe was hung by threads of various thicknesses.
5 games in, between 5 and 10 games.
Right.
There was more so, not as much last year, but the year before, major concern.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like the Blue Jays bringing in Don Mattingly, right? Like, not that you're like there.
Well,
John Schneider hasn't exactly been hanging by a thread at any moment.
No, but just in case.
But just in case, there's a guy there. Yeah, he's done your job, and there's a little bit of there's other people around here, John, that can do your job.
Well, and I think in both cases, it's the team has done the right thing. But at one point or some point, we're going to hit that line where enough is enough. A change has to be made, and you don't want to be sitting there going, "Who is the replacement?"
Right, exactly.
It's this guy over here.
Yeah.
Or literally, it's this Guy over here.
Yes, Guy.
Yeah. No.
We Guy.
No guy.
We're going to have to alter that now.
I like that.
Yeah. Yes, Guy. No Guy. Yeah. We're going to have to alter it.
Or do you have to go French? Does it have to be translated?
That's right. Well, it's the copyright is held by the federal government, so it's in both lingos.
Are you a government? Are you a government agency now?
Well,
the Yes Guy headquarters is now run by
the Copyright Office is part of the federal government.
I see.
The federal government extension. So there you go.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a given. But anyway,
I was worried you had public money.
No.
Behind your litigious.
I wish.
Litigious empire.
I wish. I'll put my website up later for donations are accepted. Believe me. We've sideswiped it, but we'll get to it now. Canada, Nigeria last night, a scoreless draw. It was obviously Christine Sinclair was front and center. And it's the penalty kick. There's another opportunity earlier in the game, and just didn't happen. It was kind of, I don't want to say sad to see, but it caught your eye for sure.
Well, I mean, it's an opportunity lost, right?
That's right.
I mean, you put that penalty in, you win that game, you're off and running. Instead, a 0-0 draw against the team you're supposed to beat, essentially, it doesn't bode well when you got, the next two games aren't easy, right? Ireland and then Ireland next, and then the host Australians.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a tough schedule. It's a tough group. They called it the group of death and all the rest of it. So, yeah, Canada didn't do itself any favors, but they still got the opportunity to turn it around.
Yeah, well, and we'll dive into that as we go along. The good thing is the games are spaced out in the early going, so it's not like you're going to get fatigued there. They're a week apart, games 1 and 2.
Yeah, it's a long tournament.
It's a month long. Yeah, absolutely. What else did I want? There was something else here. I just tweaked my mind and I lost. The Cats. The Cats and Argos tonight.
Yeah, Cats and Argos.
Yeah, so Taylor Powell starting for the Ticats, and the Argonauts are 4-0, and the Cats 2-3, and they've lost 2 quarterbacks.
Quarterback shortage in the CFL. We've been talking about it. How's your arm? You ready to get in there?
This is such a, we talked with Matt Dunnigan exactly a week ago. It's not just the pass. It's the reading, being able to process the game as it's happening. And obviously the play clock is a lot faster. There's an extra body. The field's wider. I think one of the toughest things to teach anybody, especially a quarterback, is that long field pass on the long side, because
the flank,
it's like a 50-yard pass.
Yeah,
and it's sort of, if you don't have a great arm, it dies and picked off quite easily. That's a very underrated play in my books in the CFL.
And a hard play to make.
Sure it is. I think it's underestimated.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a fastball.
Oh yeah. No, you need serious athleticism, and a lot of times you're going one way, you got to throw across the body the other way.
Yeah, good luck.
That's a big time athlete throw, right?
Yeah. No, you'll see guys do cross body throws in the NFL all the time.
Right.
But
those are the 1% of the 1%, right?
Yeah. Well, but add another 20 yards.
That's the thing. The field's wider.
Yeah,
you're right. No, it's difficult, and you know what? It is one of the, I've talked to a lot of athletic development guys about why quarterbacking is so tough and over the years, and I think you hit on it. It isn't. There are athletes out there that can jump through the roof and throw it 80 yards and kick it and do all the athletic things that you'd want, right? But it's the processor. You
got to think the game.
You got to be able to process it, man. And there's no. I don't know. They haven't come up with the fast way to train that. Some guys have it, obviously. Some guys just walk in and have it. And some guys can get it. Some guys, I think you can slowly acquire it, but how many guys get the chance to be out there enough to acquire it?
Well, you need the reps.
You need the reps, but it's a chicken and egg thing. If you're failing in the reps, you can't stay out there to get more reps. So you have to be succeeding at a certain level to get better, but it's not easy.
No, I think if if we had Zach Halaris on with us right now, he'd tell you that it took several years to be able to get ahead of that.
Right.
And he was on pretty good teams when he was doing it, too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it takes time. It really does.
So that's our CFL game. And as we said, Rod Smith will speak to us from the Tim Hortons play-by-play booth at 6:25. I don't know if I did this earlier. OverDrive is brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. So in the Open, American Brian Harman with a 5-shot lead going into the second round, which seems like a big cushion, but on that course, maybe not so much.
Yeah, well, we've seen what's happened. The carnage that can happen with one, bad trickle into one of those dastardly bunkers.
Ricky Fowler. Well, even Ricky Fowler with the drop. Scored it to the right, dropped, and hit the second one to the right.
Yeah, the internal out of bounds. I mean, that internal out of bounds on a couple of holes where guys have been, if you spray one, the hardest shot in golf is to hit the next one inbounds. And there's been some ugly, ugly numbers out there for sure. And so, a 5-shot lead is a nice cushion, but it's hardly insurmountable when you got 36 to play.
6 under today. And he's at 10 under. Tommy Fleetwood's at 5 under. And the Canadians they're having a rough time. Connors is 2 over.
Connors is going to make the cut.
Yeah. Taylor 6 over. 4 over today. So
and the cut, just check. Yeah, the cut ended up at 3 over. So.
And Lamprecht, I guess you want to call him the human windmill. The 6'8" amateur.
Yes.
Was 8 over today. Sits at +3. What a drop.
Yeah, it kind of felt it was coming. I didn't realize, nobody's wishing any ill on the kid, and 79 obviously isn't ideal, but, you sleep on a first-round lead at the Open Championship as an amateur, the pressure is considerable, right? He's not the first guy to have a fallback day after having such an incredible day as an amateur, but he's an intriguing prospect, I'll tell you.
Oh, I love watching his swing.
I mean, the ball speed this guy's creating with that wide arc. I mean, there are those who will tell you that this driver shortening rule they brought in this year, where the length of the driver shaft was shortened, the maximum length is shortened from 48 inches to 46. This guy, obviously, the tall guys benefit more than anybody from the longer shafts, obviously, and I think he was using a longer one.
I would hope so. At 6'8"?
Adjust. Yeah. No, but it's a considerable adjustment, right, to have to change clubs.
He's probably using one of those extended shafts that the guys who hit the longest drive guys use.
Right. He probably would if he could. And but anyway, no, heck of a prospect there. Cristo. I like the name.
Cristo, yeah. Well, he had a struggle today, and we won't see him again. But then
he made the cut on the number.
Did he make the cut?
Made the cut on the number.
Oh, okay. So we will see him.
Had enough of a cushion.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Coming up next, more Golf Talk. Bob Weeks will join us, and you on OverDrive on TSN 1050, streaming online and also available in the iHeartRadio app. Oh, yes, guy. Mailed in Friday. Jim Tatti Dave Feschuk with you. You're going to talk about the Open with Bob Weeks very shortly. Top of the next hour, Keegan Matheson talking about the Blue Jays who are off to Seattle, or as we like to say here, Toronto West.
Yes.
Big crowd.
And they're not taking it well down in Seattle, pulling the Blue Jays merchandise from their team store. And what I feel is kind of like a counter-capitalist move here. Like, does that make any sense to you?
So a lot of these things, when you realize that you're actually costing yourself money,
right?
You go, so why? Why would you do that?
Like, apparently the players were upset. Like, they're like, oh, this is some sort of act of treason that we're selling the opposing team's merchandise.
Yeah.
Guess what? The opposing team's fans are coming to the game.
And the money goes into a pot that's baseball-generated revenue that goes into the CBA.
Exactly.
I don't get that.
Yeah, it's good for everybody when baseball makes money, fellas. Like, get over it. And the idea that, now you're going to ban the Blue Jays fans from buying beer as well? Like, they can't buy a Blue Jays jersey and you don't want them? What next?
Well, it's like the Panthers, Florida Panthers, no Canadian fans.
Right.
And Ottawa did that years ago, right? With
Eugene Melnick tried that one.
Yeah, so it's been done. It doesn't work, and money prevails, and away we go.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Money makes the sports world go around, and guess what? The players are doing okay because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Does that bring us back to arbitration? No, Guy. No, it does not. I just did that on purpose. Yes, Guy, no, Guy, by the way, at 5:30. Everything's signed and sealed on that. And Dave Sims, by the way, the Seattle Mariners TV play-by-play voice will be by at 6, so he could give us the Seattle side of that equation. So you notice that when we sat here last week, I did the rotation three times, the 5-man rotation three times. And so our sample size, we'll get into this with Keegan Matheson, is Manoah 0-1. 2 more looks before they have to maybe
make a decision on the trade deadline.
Yeah. I don't know what happens there. I think we're asking for too much too fast there.
We're probably asking too much too fast from Manoah and Ryu, right? Ryu's pitching tonight for the Buffalo Bisons in AAA.
But that's a little more scientific. I mean, that's a pitch count and innings, and I mean that's a gradual. I mean, I think you could track that over the next 3 months where that would go.
Yeah, but I think they're counting on to be here or be ready to be here in less than 3 months.
Yeah,
that's what.
Well, no, he'll be here in 3, but it's a gradual uptick on his performance from one outing to the next. So,
it is.
So you can see where it should go.
Right, but the point is, but they're sort of counting on him, or at least sounding like they're at least hoping that he could be a factor, right? And
absolutely.
And as Hayes was saying it yesterday, let's not forget he wasn't exactly all that great when he went down with the injury, right? He hadn't been particularly effective when he went down with the injury. So what would make us think that after having Tommy John surgery and the long rehab that follows it, he would suddenly get back to the major leagues and be someone you could actually use?
But just on the basis of what kind of surgery it was, he's not going to be the same. The hope is he's different, and different in this case would be better.
Oh, so it's one of where they tighten up the ligament and suddenly you're throwing way better.
I don't think he's the same pitcher.
Who knows? Yeah, you can't be the same because you're right. You've got a foreign ligament in your arm all of a sudden, and
I think you have to learn how to pitch differently. Unless I'm totally wrong on that.
Well, I think it affects everybody differently. But you're right. It's become way more scientific. There's so many test cases and and comparable cases that the medical staff can lean on to understand how long it's taken every case from the beginning of the Tommy John era to get back to the majors, that, yeah, there's definitely a way to do it. But I think the point is, the guy is the guy, right? Like, he might be a little bit different. Maybe he'll be a little better.
You know what numbers you want is what you're saying.
Well, you hope that.
Yeah.
But can he even give you those? It's a tough question. But I think you're right. Like, between now and August 1st, they've got two guys in there that are potential starters that they really don't know if they can be considered potential starters, especially when it comes to the high leverage games of a playoff run.
And I think we have nothing but best wishes for Manoah. Mm-hmm. It's just hard for me to understand how whatever that was could be corrected and he could reach what they want him to in the remaining time of the season. I mean, that doesn't seem like a logical conclusion, does it?
No, but there's not a lot logical about why he fell off either.
I'd love to. We'll never know, but I'd love to know what the team, like the team,
it is.
The team knows. They have an idea.
They have a theory.
Yeah, I'd love to know what that is, because it's just not something you see very often.
No, I mean, how much of it is just mental? How much of it was that last year maybe his results were a little better than they should have been, just based on the.
It's a lot of conversations that would have taken place. Like, I'm not going to say warnings, but if you do this, this is what could happen. I mean, obviously it's an erosion of confidence, but why?
Right.
Why did that happen?
Right. Was it conditioning related? Was it pitch clock related? Like,
or not accepting either criticism or suggestion?
Yeah, there is that. And then there's the whole thing that this guy was a big talker, put a lot of pressure on himself. He's chirping Garrett Cole, he's chirping this guy, he's chirping that guy. He's really acting like he's a big part of the baseball establishment before he's a part of the baseball establishment.
But in that particular, like what you said there, I don't disagree with. But that, to me, when you're talking about lack of performance, and then you have to separate the lack of performance with the behavior.
Yeah,
because the behavior sort of tells you that there is a lack of performance. It's like a compensation thing, right?
Yeah, that's a fair
I have
point.
to do that because I'm not doing this. Again, if you're in the front office, somebody there could chart all this out and know exactly what it is. But from the sideline, you could only look at what you see, not what you know.
Right. And what you see is not good.
No, it doesn't look good at all. And oddly enough, we talked a lot about the Leafs, talking about the Blue Jays here, who open in Seattle tonight. And then there's the Raptors, who we spent a lot of time last week when we were on this show talking about. And so we're going to listen to an NBA insider, Mark Stein, talking about the teams around the league aren't exactly sure of where the Raptors are on Siakam, and then there's Harden and Lillard as well. So let's listen to Mark Stein first, and then we'll react to it.
We've still got quite a bit of summer runway with Lillard, with Harden, and with Siakam. It's still not, I think, if teams are still not sure Toronto's level of willingness to trade Siakam. Some teams think they are ready, some teams aren't sure. But I would also say, don't forget, Donovan Mitchell got traded in early September last year. That the talks were serious at Summer League. They went quiet for a month plus, and then the trade erupted. So it can happen.
Well, we'll see. The Siakam thing is we went over it. And again, just to remind everybody, they brought in Pirtle to help Siakam at the trade deadline, and it was noticeable, the positive effect he had. In fact, I can remember doing games and looking down and go, so why did you wait 3/4 of the season to bring in a big? Because it didn't make any sense. No,
it never made sense that they abandoned the idea that you need a traditional big, because clearly you need a traditional big. And now, the modern traditional big that can move and pass and be effective in pick and roll.
Fit. Yeah, great fit. So now you re-sign Pirtle, Freddie walks, and now everybody's talking about Siakam going. This doesn't make any sense to me, and I don't want to be an alarmist, but a lot of times when you're talking about teams and you're looking at how they got to their lowly echelon, because star player walked,
for nothing.
You acquired somebody and then made them irrelevant by trading somebody. I mean, it's all there. And you hope it doesn't happen, but it's there.
It's certainly there. I mean, look, the Freddie VanVleet move to Houston wasn't an expected outcome, right? That was a bully offer at money that the Raptors never imagined he would command in a place they never imagined would be an option, because there was an assumption that they'd have James Harden and they wouldn't be needing Fred VanVleet. And yet, it all proved to be wrong, and the assumptions were incorrect, and Van Vliet's gone, which is not optimal because, you know, in terms of asset management, to lose a guy of that value for essentially nothing except the cap space as he walks out the door is very damaging to your franchise, especially, you know, he's been a heart and soul guy. And you're right. Guess what? It wasn't just a shock to Toronto management. It was a shock to Jakob Poeltl, who signed there under the assumption Freddie Van Vliet had every intention of coming back, right? So you're right. This is a tough moment for the franchise, and
it is.
They're betting, like Jim. The bottom line is they're betting big on Scotty Barnes,
but that was apparent from the moment they drafted him.
Yeah,
I mean, you saw how they changed the way they played, how they gave him the ball, and last year, you know, Freddie was asked. I can't remember what the source was, but Freddie was asked about, you know, the difference, and he alluded to it and how he had to adjust to it, and that's a lot of that is Scotty running the ball and not Freddie.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. And look, that was by design, and that was. You could feel the tension in that room. Fred acknowledged recently that there was a chemistry problem on that team between some of the older guys and some of the younger guys. And I think that would be specifically Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam, the two old pals who came up together and turned themselves into max salary players, you know, from various levels of humble beginnings, to Scotty Barnes, who's been the anointed 4th overall pick and, you know, in their eyes probably been given too much too soon and hasn't really justified it.
Well, so far, there's plenty of runway for him.
For sure, 21 years old.
Yeah, and not being negative or critical. You know, these things happen. You draft a player like that, you realize how good he is, and guess what? That's a gift. And so you have to change things. The important thing is that when you're changing things, first of all, you don't do things that duplicate. So if you're going to bring Poeltl in, you keep him.
Right.
But if if Freddie goes out the door, that's a misstep. Mm-hmm. I don't think you could say that any other way.
No.
And the Siakam asset management, if you're going to trade him, then I would assume at some point Poeltl has to go too.
There's a ton of pressure on this front office now, right?
You have to do proper asset management.
Yes.
I didn't want to reverse that because I was going to say something that would have been a career ender.
It's so true. Like that, yeah. A lot of the story of the post-championship era, Jim, has been an exercise in failed asset management. And some of it you can argue because obviously when they let the likes of, Kawhi Leonard leaving for nothing, they tried their darndest. They wanted to keep him. They were, listening to Uncle Dennis's insane demands. They were ready to pony up whatever they could pony up.
But enough was enough.
The Clippers beat them to it, and that was the end of it, right? So
I think what hurt was the Clippers owner campaigning for this to happen.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then all the, you heard the commissioner himself talk about the rumors of deals outside the CBA that were made in the summer of Kawhi, and I don't think you need to know too much to realize there was a lot of wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Yeah.
The max salary is this, but we also got this, and so there was that. And you can understand that. You could forgive that. You had to take that swing. But then, Marc Gasol leaves for nothing, and Serge Ibaka leaves for essentially nothing. And then, Kyle Lowry, you at least get Precious Achiuwa back, but, not exactly player for player, value for value, right? In the sign and trade. So, right, like you watch a championship team walk out the door essentially. And what did you get back for it? And that's where you are.
Well, that's why they are where they are, right there. And you can go through any struggling franchise and map the road to the depths of the standings based on not getting return for players that walk out the door that you move.
Yeah, it's tough. And a lot of those situations, like we understand a lot of what happened was based on a bet that a lot of teams were making that a certain guy named Giannis Antetokounmpo was not happy in Milwaukee and might be shaking free. It wasn't just the Raptors who were preparing the groundwork for that possibility, right? And they certainly, there's no doubt they were doing that. And they weren't the only ones doing that. And then what do you know? Giannis re-signs and everybody's left holding the empty cap space and going, we don't have any players.
The music stopped and somebody got ripped for a chair. We're going to step out. When we come back, we're going to play an impromptu yes guy, no guy. That is next. This is OverDrive on TSN 1050, also available in the iHeartRadio app and streaming online. Oh, really, guy? Nailed it on Friday. Jim Tatti Dave Feschuk with you. And because we have a few spare moments, time for this, Jim.
Yes guy, no guy.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, drivers and passengers, time now for the OverDrive edition of Yes Guy, No Guy. Go ahead, sir.
I always thought this was our game. Like I don't know what you're doing here.
Well, you're delusional. That's why you thought that. I mean, let's be honest.
No one's arguing that, Jim.
Don't go to war with the Tap Man, Grappler.
Yeah.
Don't go to war with the Tap Man. He's got an army of lawyers.
And 5 or 6 levels on answers.
Yes.
So you are at stage 1. If you want to proceed through 5, all the way up to stage 6, go ahead. But make sure you have bandages.
No, listen, it's a Melody Friday. I don't have the patience for that.
Okay,
so,
go ahead.
anyways,
Yeah,
yes
go
guy,
ahead.
no guy, number 1. If the Leafs start slow this season, Sheldon Keefe will be looking over his shoulder at Guy Boucher as his potential replacement.
Oh, this is a resounding yes guy. This is a wee Guy, because the guy who will be looking over his shoulder at happens to be the guy with head coaching experience who has a track record of impressing Brendan Shanahan, because he was the heir apparent to coach the Maple Leafs before the Maple Leafs signed Mike Babcock way back in those crazy days of 2016. So this is a no-brainer, and the minute Sheldon Keefe stumbles, it'll be Guy Boucher standing on the bench.
Yeah, I have to emphatically agree. Hard yes guy, all capital letters, exclamation points, multiple exclamation points, yes guy.
Okay, can't argue with any of that. Moving on. Yes guy, no guy, number 2. If the Blue Jays reach the postseason, Alek Manoah will be on their roster.
Gonna go with a no guy. No guy. Don't see it. This is
Okay.
It'd be nice if it turned out, but boy, I certainly wouldn't be. I wouldn't count on it.
I'm going to go yes guy because, look, how confident am I in my yes? It's like a
wavering yes guy.
I'm a wavering, not quite sure of myself yes. And that goes against Alek Manoah, who's very sure of himself or has been at his best. It was only last year, Jim, that he was, the star of the show at the All-Star game. Like, it's hard to believe how the mighty have fallen, because he's a mighty, mighty athlete. But I got to believe that between now and the end of September, he can figure something out and become an asset that they can actually use. I'm not sure he's going to be a horse of a starting pitcher, but I think he's an arm they'll be able to use.
Yeah, and I think, we see it every year in the postseason that and it drives me nuts, but if you're able to go 4 innings, it seems, in a postseason game as a starter, that almost seems acceptable, because the second you run into any sort of trouble in a playoff game, manager's, coming out there to get you.
Right.
And it really does feel like it's almost like a too early to tell guy. As you mentioned, Dave, just with everything he did last season and the talent that is very clearly there. Like, it's the middle of July. Like, you got to think he's able to put some semblance of a season together. And, I mean, listen, you have Gausman, you have Barrios, you feel confident in Bassett. Kikuchi's going tonight. Obviously, we'll see what he's got the rest of the year. But I still think at this point in October, I have a real hard time putting Yusei Kikuchi on the mound over Alek Manoah.
Need another arm. Either way you select.
I think they need another arm, and it's not just. I know they've talked about a bullpen arm, but I think they need somebody that can contribute to the starting rotation, because I'm not sold on Manoah, and I'm not sold on Ryu coming back.
No, and you're not sold on the big addition from today from the Cardinals, Genesis Cabrera, who was DFA'd yesterday. Yeah, we'll get that scouting report from Keegan in a few minutes. All right, we got time for one more. Yes guy, no guy. Both Sidney Crosby and Alex Ovechkin play until they're 40 years old.
I'm going to go yes guy. I mean, they're great hockey players. It's not that much of a stretch for either one to get there, so I'm going hard yes guy.
Oh, this is beyond a yes guy for me. I mean, Sidney Crosby is addicted to hockey by every piece of evidence I've ever looked at. This guy loves the game. If you've ever watched him practice, I've had the pleasure of watching him practice many times, and the enthusiasm with which he takes to a practice rink has always blown me away. Like, it's infectious. It makes you want to go out there and stick handle and fool around with the puck, because the way he does it makes it just look so much fun. And with Ovechkin, I think, this whole Gretzky goal chase is going to keep him up until he's probably around 40, maybe a little past that.
Yeah.
And so he ain't leaving until he gets that.
That was a no-brainer. Yes guy, no guy.
Really?
Grappler, no-brainer.
See, I don't know. I'm leaning no guy. It's just, as these guys get older, to expect 2 people to be able to play past 40 when you see it, less and less in the world of sports, it's just, all it can take is one injury and the game's never the same. And I mean, not that either of these guys have shown much of a decline, but if there is a major injury that causes them to just not be able to play up to their standards, neither of them seem like the player who just want to be a role player. Like if they're not able to be a leader on the ice for their team, I just don't see one of those guys sticking around to be a, third line winger, third line center.
Injuries can happen, but assuming everybody's healthy, we're not considering it at all because I don't think we see it that the team says goodbye to either one of them, and I just don't see that happening. Anyway, that's a great discussion. Yes Guy, No Guy is scheduled to return later in the broadcast. Coming up next, Keegan Matheson talking baseball. This is OverDrive on TSN 1050, streaming online, also available on the iHeartRadio app.